Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is about to come out. I am super excited for this game. I am a huge Xenoblade fan. I love the franchise. I love the original on the Wii. I love Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U. And I'm sure I'm going to love this one as well. But I think there's a lot of new fans that were introduced during Xenoblade Chronicles X during the Wii U era who don't necessarily understand just how different Xenoblade Chronicles 2 will be compared to X, because it's supposed to take more after the original Xenoblade on the Wii. So I think it would be really good to go over some of the differences between Xenoblade Chronicles X and the original Xenoblade. Now, one of the key differences between the original Xenoblade and X is the musical direction. So in Xenoblade Chronicles X, a lot of people were very critical of the musical direction in that game because there was a lot of vocals, there was a lot of very techno, upbeat sort of styles and music that didn't really... I liked it, but a lot of people felt that the music in that game didn't always mesh well with the city or different worlds you would explore. Now, in the original Xenoblade, there were no vocals. From what I remember, it was almost entirely instrumental. It was very, very beautiful, and even though I liked the music in X, I loved the music in the original Xenoblade. There's definitely a completely different, distinct style, and you're going to be seeing a lot of that in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because they're actually bringing along some of the original composers in the original Xenoblade Chronicles, like Yasunori Mitsuda. I hope I didn't butcher his name there. But anyways, you can look up some interviews with him talking about the game. I'll actually put some links in the description below for that. So with Xenoblade Chronicles X, when the Team Monolith Soft went into development, switching over from the Wii to the Wii U era, the HD era, they decided to focus on creating an open world experience. This meant a very technically impressive game, especially on the Wii U, and the world ended up being very expansive, one of the largest open worlds we've ever seen. You could travel from one point to another seamlessly with no loading screens, and this world was huge. There was no segments at all, it was all one giant cohesive world. And on top of that, you had a lot of freedom as to how you could go about exploring the world. It was not linear pretty much in any way. And this was a stark contrast to Xenoblade, the original on the Wii, because the overall progression of the game was pretty linear. You could go back and backtrack and such and do different side quests and such, but the different sections you would explore in the game were, well, they were sections, they were segmented, they were very large sections, but still, sections nonetheless. There wasn't a seamless transition from one point to another, and the overarching progression of the game was a lot more linear compared to Xenoblade X. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it's actually going back to more of a linear style like what we saw with the original Xenoblade. So here's the thing, with Xenoblade X, because they were focusing on creating an open world and having a lot more options to how you explore the world in a very open fashion, it was a lot harder to create a very in-depth and expressive story. The story was good, but it wasn't great like it was in the original Xenoblade. I mean, just look at the protagonist. The protagonist in Xenoblade X is a blank slate. He's just an avatar that you can customize. There's no real personality to him at all. As opposed to Shulk from the original Xenoblade, his name is Shulk. He's a character in Smash Bros. He has a huge history. There's a lot going on with him. He had tons of development throughout the story of the original Xenoblade. And that's something we can expect more of in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is going to have more of a linear story with lots of characters that are going to have lots of development and interactions. It's going to be a very in-depth story. The musical direction is going to be a lot more like the original Xenoblade, and while the world may not be technically open and super expansive like it was in Xenoblade X, those sections are going to be very large, even though segmented, still very large and expansive, and there's going to be a lot to explore. And here's the thing. Something that they sort of lost when they went over to X were these titans. See, in the original Xenoblade, you explored two giant titans. The two giant titans were the land masses that you would explore. You would go through caves, and that would be the belly of a giant monster. You would be exploring these lakes, which would be the head of a giant titan. Or you could even go into a dungeon that was essentially the heart of a giant titan. In Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there is multiple titans that are living and flying in the sky, and you're going to be exploring them. They're basically so big that they are mini continents that you would explore. I can only imagine that there will be some sort of epic battle on one of their heads, or a giant city on one of their wings, or you'll be in their belly fighting some sort of boss, or something along those lines. So I'm pretty excited for Xenoblade 2, as you can tell, and while I like Xenoblade X, I think that the style of the original Xenoblade is the superior style for now, and I can't wait to go through this epic adventure for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Anyways, guys, those are just some of the key differences that I think are between Xenoblade X and the original Xenoblade. So if you haven't played the original Xenoblade before, now you know about those key differences, and maybe you'll be more excited for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I finish editing this really quick because I need to go play Xenoblade. Alright, have a good night, everyone. Bye.